When we think about the end of a war, we usually picture parades and peace treaties. We think the story is over. But that's not right. That's actually where one of the most interesting, complicated, and deeply human stories begins. This is that story. It's about what happened on the ground, in the rubble-filled streets of a defeated Germany, right after World War II. It's a story about how people who were trained, conditioned, and ordered to hate each other, to see each other as monsters, somehow found a way to build families together. It's an incredible transformation, so let's get right into it.
But before we dive in, let me ask you something. Just think about it for a second. What does that word enemy actually mean? Really mean? Is it someone who wears a different uniform? Someone who speaks a different language? Or is it just whoever you're told it is? Just keep that question in the back of your mind, because for thousands and thousands of people in the spring of 1945, the definition they'd been given their entire lives was about to completely fall apart.
All right, let's go to Heidelberg, Germany. It's late March 1945. For years, the Nazi propaganda machine had been working overtime, painting American soldiers as these inhuman barbarians, degenerates who would destroy everything they touched. So when the American tanks finally rumbled into the city, you can imagine the terror. People were hiding in their cellars, peering through curtains, absolutely convinced the end of the world had arrived. But what they saw was not what they were promised.
This right here, this is the moment everything starts to change. This isn't an official report. It's a line from a 23-year-old woman's private journal, something she probably thought no one else would ever see. And just listen to the shock in her words. She's not talking about weapons or tactics. She's talking about chocolate. Real chocolate. And smiles. In that one small human moment, years of carefully constructed hate started to dissolve.
The contrast is it's jarring, isn't it? On one side, you have the official government story, monsters are coming. And on the other, what people are seeing with their own two eyes. Clean-cut guys with good teeth, who, instead of bringing destruction, are handing out candy to kids. It's one of the clearest examples of how a simple act of human kindness can be more powerful than years and years of state-sponsored propaganda.
Now you might be thinking, great, the soldiers were nice, the Germans were relieved, problem solved. But not so fast. Because while GIs were handing out chocolate, the American High Command had an ironclad absolute rule: no fraternization. Don't even talk to them. And this wasn't some friendly suggestion. The punishment for just having a conversation with a German civilian was a $65 fine. To a private, that was literally their entire month's pay. The message was clear: maintain a hard line. They are the conquered. We are the conquerors. But as we're about to see, rules like that don't stand a chance against human nature.
So you have this official policy of separation on one side, but it was about to smash head-on into a much more powerful force, the reality of pure, desperate survival. The winter that followed, the hunger winter of '46, was brutal. Life for the average German was just a constant gnawing search for food. And out of that desperation, a whole new unofficial economy was born. Okay, just let these numbers sink in for a minute because they tell you everything you need to know. The average American soldier was getting 4,000 calories a day. A German soldier, an official enemy captured and held in a POW camp, was getting 2,800 calories. But an ordinary German civilian, a woman or a child trying to survive in the rubble, they were lucky to get 1,000. People were literally starving to death. While just down the street, American Army kitchens were throwing away food. The disparity was unimaginable.
So what happens when the official money, the Reichsmark, is basically worthless? Well, a new currency emerges. And in post-war Germany, that currency was American goods, especially cigarettes. A GI could walk into his base store, the PX, and buy a carton of smokes for $1. He could then walk outside the gate and trade that same carton on the black market for 1,000 Reichsmarks. Enough to buy a radio, a nice camera, or someone's cherished family silver. Cigarettes, coffee, nylon stockings, these weren't luxuries anymore. They were the keys to survival. And this is just gut-wrenching. This quote from Sergeant Romano shows the impossible moral position the soldiers were in. Can you even imagine being ordered to intentionally destroy perfectly good food while starving children are watching you? The official policy was to keep that hard line. But for a lot of these guys, that was a line they just couldn't cross. They started to bend the rules, to quietly ignore orders when the officers weren't looking. Because the enemy in front of them wasn't an idea from a poster anymore. It was just a hungry person.
Now, in the middle of all this chaos and hunger, German women were in a uniquely difficult, almost impossible situation. With millions of German men dead or still in prisoner of war camps, the burden of rebuilding and just surviving fell on them. And the choices they had to make were just awful. There were no good options.
For a lot of women, this was pretty much the only respectable option available. They became die Trümmerfrauen, the Rubble women. Day in and day out, they would climb over the ruins of their own cities, clearing away bricks and debris with their bare hands, all for pay that could barely keep them alive. It was grueling, back-breaking, dangerous work. This was the baseline reality.
But there was another way. You could get a job working for the Americans, as a secretary, a cook, a driver. It paid way better, and it gave you access to food from the American mess halls. But taking that job came with a staggering social price. Your own people would turn on you, and the names they called you, they were weapons designed to shame you. Ami Leibchen, Ami Lover, Schokoladenmädchen, Chocolate Girl, as if you were selling your body for a candy bar. And the cruelest one, Veronika Dankeschön, a nasty pun mixing venereal disease with a polite thank you.
This quote from Gertrude Wagner, who worked in an American motor pool, just lays it all out with devastating clarity. Let's just break that down. Traitor, whore, fool. Those were her options. Every single path led to judgment from her own community. It was an impossible tightrope to walk, a choice between your physical survival and your social survival. There was simply no way to win.
So for 3 long, grinding years, this whole desperate system, this cigarette economy, was the reality. Relationships were often transactional because they had to be. But then, in the summer of 1948, something happened that flipped the entire board over. And it wasn't a battle or a treaty. It was a simple economic reform that changed absolutely everything about how these people related to each other. On June 20th, 1948, the Allies introduced a new, stable currency, the Deutschmark. And it was like a switch was flipped. Literally overnight, the black market just evaporated. A carton of cigarettes went from being a treasure that could save your family to, well, just being a carton of cigarettes again. For the first time in years, German women had real economic agency. They didn't need an American's access to goods to survive. And that meant, for the very first time, relationships could be based on something else entirely, genuine choice and affection.
And you can see this incredible power shift happening in real time. This report from a military police commander says it all. Suddenly, the GIs couldn't just rely on their economic advantage. Their cigarettes and coffee weren't a golden ticket anymore. If they wanted to go out with a German woman, they had to actually, date her. They had to bring flowers, ask her out to dinner, show genuine interest. It was a whole new ballgame. So now, with the economic pressure gone, real romances started to bloom all over Germany. Thousands of couples fell in love and wanted to get married. But the system wasn't built for that. Marrying the former enemy wasn't as simple as just saying, I do. It meant entering a bureaucratic maze designed to be as difficult and suspicious as possible.
First of all, the official ban on these marriages wasn't even lifted until late 1946. And even after that, the process was an absolute obstacle course. The German woman had to go through intense vetting. They ran political background checks to make sure she wasn't a secret Nazi. She had to get medical exams, provide character references. And here's the craziest part. She had to somehow prove to a government official that her love was sincere and not just a scheme to get to America. And even if you passed all of that, you still had to wait, sometimes for the better part of a year, just for permission to join your new husband.
These words from Margareta Thompson really put a human face on it. Imagine that feeling. They examined my entire life like I was a criminal. The person you love wants to build a life with you, but the system is treating you like a suspect. Your entire past, your family, your motives, all put under a microscope. But for her, and for thousands of other women, the prize at the end, a life together, was worth all of the humiliation.
So, when you take a step back and look at it all, the desperation, the impossible choices, the bureaucratic nightmares, you have to ask, what did it all add up to? Well, the sum of all these deeply personal struggles created something massive, something no one could have possibly planned, a powerful and lasting bond between two nations that had just been mortal enemies.
Over 14,000. That's not just a number. That is 14,000 German women who packed up their lives and moved to America as war brides. Think about what that means. Every single one of them was a living, breathing bridge between two cultures. They weren't just wives. They were unofficial ambassadors, creating new, binational families and slowly changing the way Americans saw the German people, one neighbor at a time.
And here is the truly fascinating payoff. The next generation, the children of these marriages, grew up with a foot in both worlds. They were bicultural, many were bilingual, and they had a natural, intuitive understanding of both American and German culture. As the Cold War ramped up, this generation became an incredible, unforeseen asset. They were perfectly positioned to become the diplomats, the translators, and the cultural liaisons who helped forge the modern German-American alliance.
This quote from a woman named Anna Patterson says it all perfectly. We were accidents of history who became agents of reconciliation. Their journeys didn't start with some grand political purpose. They started with hunger, with loneliness, with a shared laugh or a stick of gum. But these small personal acts, born out of the chaos of war, ended up building a foundation for peace that has lasted for decades.
Which brings us all the way back to where we started. This whole incredible story, from propaganda posters to wedding photos, it really forces us to ask a tough question. When we're told who our enemy is, do we have the courage to look past the labels, past the official story, and actually see the human being standing right there in front of us? And maybe even more importantly, do we have the courage to ask ourselves if what we're being told is really the truth?